What if I told you that the most dangerous person you'll ever meet won't come at you with rage, but with a smile? What if the one who shakes your hand today is the same person quietly rooting for your downfall tomorrow? Jung called this the shadow, the invisible side of human nature that hides behind charm and civility. And as I explore this phenomenon with you today, I want to challenge everything you think you know about trust, friendship, and authenticity. Because if we fail to recognize the smiling enemy, we lose not just protection against deceit, but something far more tragic, our ability to see the truth in ourselves. We'll begin where every real philosophical journey begins, with self-reflection. After all, before we spot deceit in others, shouldn't we first spot it in the mirror? I've noticed that many of us, myself included, like to think we can read people. We believe that sincerity beams through a person's tone, their gestures, their eyes. But Jung warned that the psyche is not transparent, it's layered, coded, constantly disguising itself through the archetypes we perform. The smiling enemy is not simply someone who wants to harm you. They might genuinely think they mean well, even as they quietly envy you, compete with you, or sabotage you. Deep down, they might even love what they are attempting to destroy. There's a tragic paradox here. The closer someone is to us, the more skillfully they can wear the smile. As we open up, they learn our vulnerabilities, our hopes, our fears, and if their shadow is undealt with, it begins to feast on that intimacy. So I ask you, when was the last time you questioned the motives of someone who always agrees with you? Do you notice when flattery feels sweet or when it feels strategic?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You see, Jung's warning wasn't about avoiding people. It was about integrating awareness. Beware the smiling enemy does not mean live in paranoia. It means wake up to the patterns behind appearances. The smile is the oldest camouflage in human history. It reassures the tribe, hides aggression, buys time for manipulation. But even more fascinating, this trait doesn't belong only to them. It lies dormant in you and me. There are times we wear our own pleasant masks to conceal annoyance, jealousy, or competition. We convince ourselves we're being kind, but beneath that kindness may live a quiet resentment. Jung said, paraphrasing, that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate. So in this sense, every smiling enemy you meet is a reflection, a mirror, held by the universe to show you a side of yourself you've refused to see. Have you ever smiled through bitterness, laughed through envy, or complimented someone whose success unsettled you? If so, you've met the smiling enemy within. Here's the hard truth. Civilization itself runs on this duality. Politeness, diplomacy, customer service, these are all forms of socially acceptable smiles. We learn that to coexist, we must suppress the brute side of our instinctive self, the one that competes, compares, and desires dominance. Yet each suppression adds tension, storing emotional energy beneath the mask. Jung observed that what we repress always seeks expression. When the mask grows too tight, it cracks, and suddenly we see eruptions of hostility disguised as virtue. Entire organizations, relationships, and movements collapse when suppressed envy or deceit bursts through their polished self-image. So what does it mean to live authentically in such a world? Can a society function without the mask, or is the mask a necessary evil? There's a haunting balance here between sincerity and civility, between truth and survival. And maybe the real wisdom lies in not removing the mask, but in knowing you're wearing one. But I want to challenge us even deeper. How do you discern a smiling enemy not just out there, but within your own moral habits? Picture someone who always appears kind, generous, perhaps even saintly. Beneath that virtue may live a craving for admiration. When their goodness goes unacknowledged, resentment grows. Eventually, their moral purity becomes a subtle form of power. They smile not from compassion, but from superiority. Are we ever guilty of this ourselves? When we help others, do we truly love, or do we secretly want to feel needed, important, divine? Jung's psychology strips away such comfortable illusions. He invites us to meet the dark root of every bright emotion, to realize that our smiles, too, have shadows. And until we face that, we will keep attracting smiling enemies, because life always sends us the teachers we most resist. The warning, then, is not about cynicism, it's about discernment. When you interact with people, observe not the words but the energy beneath them. Some smiles drain you, others nourish you. Some compliments inflate your ego so you stop growing, others challenge you with silent honesty. Cultivate an ear for subtle dissonance, the mismatch between tone and intent. I promise, once you sharpen this sense, you'll begin to hear the psychological static in many conversations. And this awareness, though isolating at first, will free you. You'll stop seeking approval from those who secretly envy you. You'll forgive betrayals faster, because you'll recognize they stem from unacknowledged pain, not pure malice. And perhaps most importantly, you'll stop becoming your own smiling enemy, no longer deceiving yourself into comfort, but facing life with naked courage. Now, I have to ask you, what masks are you still wearing, and what truth are you afraid to show beneath them? The mirror within, how shadows create our enemies and ourselves. When we speak about enemies, most of us imagine them as external threats, people who oppose, betray, or envy us. But Carl Jung's warning runs deeper and far more unsettling. The enemy is not outside, it begins within the self. The smiling enemy is an outward reflection of our unacknowledged shadow. Jung once suggested that the things we hate most in others are precisely what we have yet to confront in ourselves. Think about that. Every time you recoil from another person's deceit, arrogance, or hypocrisy, there's a reason that reaction burns so vividly it resonates with something half recognized in your own psyche. It's as if the universe uses the behavior of others as an X-ray, revealing fractures in our self-knowledge. You dislike manipulation, yet have you ever exaggerated a detail to protect your image? You despise arrogance, yet have you craved attention in subtle ways? The mirror within never lies. And until we dare to see our reflection fully, we'll continue to encounter our own darkness wearing someone else's face. Isn't that what makes life's relationships both so painful and so necessary? Every bond, every betrayal is a philosophical classroom for self-realization. The smiling enemy, both the one in the world and the one living inside us, has a singular power. It teaches us humility. That may sound simplistic, but I've learned that humility is not weakness, it's clarity. When we recognize our capacity for duplicity, we stop being naive about human nature. We stop expecting purity from others and start focusing on authenticity. The truth is, humans are walking contradictions. We crave love but fear intimacy, preach honesty yet hide truths, offer peace but secretly thrive on conflict. And that's precisely why awareness, not denial, is salvation. Jung believed that integration, not perfection, was the path to wholeness. If you can acknowledge your envy, your hunger for validation, your subtle manipulations, You rob them of their power over you. The smiling enemy loses half their strength once you stop pretending you're immune to deceit. Isn't that liberating? Instead of building walls of moral superiority, we build mirrors of understanding. We no longer say, "I would never do that," but rather, "I understand why I could." Through that awareness, real wisdom begins. Let's talk about mirrors, not the physical ones, but the psychological ones, the people and situations that provoke strong emotional reactions in us. These mirrors don't just show our reflections, they reveal our blind spots. When you feel instinctive dislike for someone's behavior, pause and ask, "What part of me feels threatened by this?" For example, say you resent a colleague who constantly brags about their achievements. Beneath that frustration might lie your own longing for recognition. Or perhaps you judge someone for their false charm because you fear your own ability to deceive. Jung called this process shadow projection, and until we wrestle with it, we repeat patterns endlessly. You attract smiling enemies until you learn what they are meant to awaken in you. In a way, the people who test your patience most fiercely are your hidden teachers. They hand you fragments of your unconscious self, wrapped uncomfortably in unpleasant behavior. The question is, do you unwrap the lesson, or do you curse the messenger? I know this sounds challenging, maybe even unfair. Why should you be responsible for another person's deception? But here's the paradox. While you can't control another's motives, you can control your perception. The more conscious you become, the less power external betrayal has over your peace. Instead of being drained by manipulation, you see it as a signal, a lesson about boundaries, discernment, and truth. The smiling enemy thrives in the unconscious realm, where emotions flare and projection runs rampant. The moment you bring them into conscious analysis, their strategy collapses. They can no longer feed on your naivete. That is the heart of Jung's wisdom. Awareness transforms suffering into understanding. And understanding, repeated enough times, becomes peace. So I ask you, what would happen if instead of blaming your enemies, you thank them for revealing what you still need to master within yourself? But let's not romanticize this process. Integration is excruciating. It demands that we accept parts of ourselves we've spent years denying. It means admitting that we are, at times, the smiling enemy in someone else's story. That's a heavy truth. We might have wounded others while pretending to help, manipulated kindness to gain favor, or masked fear with charm. When this realization dawns, shame often follows, but that's the crucible of transformation. Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The work is not glamorous, it is continuous. Every day, the mirror invites you to see not your curated image, not your moral mask, but your raw humanity. And when you embrace that sight, when you face your own smiling demons with honesty, something extraordinary happens, compassion awakens. You begin to understand that every smiling enemy, every deceiver, every betrayed trust is part of the great theater of human imperfection, calling us back to awareness, humility, and truth. The alchemy of awareness, turning betrayal into inner freedom. Every betrayal, every wound inflicted by a smiling enemy, carries within it the seed of transformation. It forces us to confront pain we didn't expect, pushes us to question our judgments, and humbles our certainty about who we can trust. Yet here's the paradoxical beauty. Awareness, once born from such pain, becomes a type of alchemy. It turns poison into medicine. Jung saw this process as the alchemical operation of the psyche, where suffering and deception are the fires that purify consciousness. When someone betrays you, the natural reaction is heartbreak or revenge. But if you pause and turn inward, something deeper begins to unfold. You begin to ask, why does this hurt so much? Why did I fail to see it coming? What blind trust, what need, what illusion kept my eyes closed? These questions move us from victimhood to understanding. Betrayal, when observed through awareness, becomes one of life's most demanding teachers. It shows you precisely where your boundaries were weak, where your desire for approval was too strong, and where your fear of solitude made you accept false love. Consider how awareness transforms everything. The moment you name manipulation, it loses its camouflage. When you see envy for what it is, a distorted form of admiration, it stops haunting you. This doesn't mean becoming cold or cynical, it means becoming luminous with perception. Jung wrote that the shadow cannot be eliminated, but must be assimilated into a larger, more balanced self. Every smiling enemy offers you a chance to practice this assimilation, to hold a tension between compassion and clarity. And that's the secret. You can see through someone's deceit and still not hate them. You can forgive without forgetting, release without returning. In that balance lies mastery of the self. Because when you know your own shadows, when you've met your own smiling masks, you no longer fear the masks of others. You simply observe, understand, adjust, and move on with calm authority. Isn't that the freedom we all crave? The ability to interact with humanity without being devoured by its contradictions? Let's take this notion further. Awareness isn't just self-protection, it's inner liberation. The smiling enemy teaches you to value solitude, self-reliance, and emotional independence. Too many of us chase external validation, mistaking attention for love. We align with people who flatter us, because flattery feels warm in a cold world. But awareness sees beyond that warmth. It recognizes dependency and questions why it's there. Jung suggested that every person carries both light and darkness, and that peace is found not in choosing one over the other, but in holding both without denial. The smiling enemy tests our ability to hold that balance. Their betrayal whispers, can you stay compassionate without becoming naive? Can you remain trusting without being blind? These are questions that, once deeply pondered, refine your character into something unshakable. You stop needing the world to be honest, and instead you become a person whose calm discernment dissolves deceit wherever you go. That is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming whole. You've probably noticed by now how cyclical this truth is. Life keeps sending us the same archetypes in different disguises until we finally recognize the pattern. The flattering friend who gossips behind our back. The mentor who admires your potential but subtly undermines it. The lover who promises eternity but vanishes at the first test of character. Each one represents more than personal pain. They're symbols of disowned aspects of the self. When we finally integrate the lesson, when we stop trying to change others and start observing our own behaviors, the cycle ends. We attract different kinds of people, not because the world changed, but because we did. Energy meets energy. Consciousness recognizes itself. And so, the smiling enemy becomes obsolete. They no longer have anywhere to hide in your reality. This is not esoteric mysticism, it's psychological evolution. Once you understand the mechanism of projection and shadow, deception loses its glamour. You simply see through it. And perhaps that's the ultimate revelation Jung wanted us to realize. that peace doesn't come from eliminating dark traits or destroying all enemies, but from refining perception until no illusion can trap you again. There's a quiet power in that. You begin to love without illusion, trust without dependency, and forgive without bitterness. The smiling enemy then becomes just another actor in the grand cosmic drama, playing their role to perfection, unknowingly guiding you closer to wholeness. Their deceit, once you've processed it, becomes your wisdom. Their betrayal becomes your strength. Their manipulation becomes your mirror. And when all that integrates, you rise lighter, freer, unshaken. You no longer need masks to survive. Your authenticity becomes your armor. So before this conversation ends, let me leave you with a question. Who in your life right now, friend, rival, lover, even your own reflection, is asking you to see the truth behind the smile? Because the moment you see it, not with judgment but with awareness, you step into a consciousness no enemy can touch. You become a person rooted in inner reality, immune to false allies and manipulative kindness. This is how Jung's warning transforms from fear to freedom. Beware the smiling enemy no longer means keep your guard up, it means keep your eyes awake. It's not a call to build walls, but to cultivate vision so sharp that deceit becomes transparent and integrity becomes effortless. And in that awakening, you realize something breathtaking, that the real goal was never to unmask others, but to unmask yourself. Because when you see who you truly are beneath all layers, the smiling enemy disappears, for the war between appearance and essence has ended. All that remains is truth, silent and radiant, smiling back not to deceive, but to understand. You see, what we have been circling around this whole time is not simply a warning against the smiles of others, but a revelation about the human condition itself. Jung's insight was not meant to fill us with suspicion, but to wake us from the comfortable slumber of superficial living. The smiling enemy is a symbol, a mirror image of every place in our psyche, where we trade truth for approval, where we disguise our discomfort with charm, where we repress passion under a facade of calm. To truly beware the smiling enemy is to beware the temptation to live shallowly, to mistake politeness for peace, to confuse social harmony with the health of the soul. Jung would tell us that the greatest betrayal is not necessarily from outside, but the one we commit against our own potential when we refuse to confront what is real. So yes, watch the world with clear eyes, but watch your own mind with even clearer ones. Because deception only thrives in unconsciousness, and that is where the most smiling enemies dwell, inside of us. We live in an age obsessed with happiness and positivity. Smiles are marketed like products. We curate them for photos, we wear them to interviews, we use them as emotional currency. But Jung would have warned that over-reliance on the smiling mask breeds collective neurosis. When we teach ourselves to smile through suffering instead of confronting it, we distort authenticity into performance. We create cultures that value pleasantness over honesty, appearance over depth. What scary irony that the same symbols we associate with kindness become the very sign of repression and avoidance. The truly content don't need to smile constantly, they emanate quiet presence. The constantly smiling often carry unseen storms. So the next time you see an unbroken smile in yourself or another, dare to wonder, what pain is that brightness hiding? Are we nurturing truth or nurturing denial? The smiling enemy may not always be malicious, it may simply be exhausted, pretending strength where vulnerability longs to be seen. Let me tell you something from my own experience. Awareness hurts at first, but ignorance kills slowly. The first time you realize how often you've been charmed by false cheerfulness, or how often your own smile was a shield instead of an expression, you might feel betrayed by your own instincts. But stay with that discomfort, it's sacred. It means the mask is falling away. And when the mask dissolves, something far more genuine appears: empathy. You stop treating self-awareness like a punishment and start seeing it as liberation. You become capable of seeing people as they are, not as you wish them to be. You can love them without illusion, forgive without naivety, and walk away without hatred. That's the quiet revolution Jung envisioned, not a world without enemies, but a world of individuals so conscious that deceit, envy, pride, and hidden malice can no longer manipulate them. You become, in essence, ungameable not because you're cynical, but because you're awake. Now, let's stretch this even further. What if the smiling enemy was never evil at all? What if they were simply an undeveloped fragment of consciousness, trying to evolve through the act of deception? Jung said that evil is merely the shadow of unintegrated good. The smiling enemy might think they are manipulating you, but on a deeper archetypal level, they are participating in your awakening. Your pain at their betrayal becomes the fire that refines your vision. Without them, you might never have learned to differentiate light from false light, truth from flattery. And that's the ultimate irony. By awakening to their deception, you free not only yourself but also them. Because when you meet manipulation with insight instead of reaction, you deny the game its power. You reflect awareness back into the system, and awareness, once reflected, multiplies. The smiling enemy's mask cracks, and they must face themselves. Thus, your understanding becomes transformative not only for you but for the collective psyche. So as we close this journey, let's come full circle. Carl Jung's warning, beware the smiling enemy, is not merely psychological advice, it's a spiritual compass. It reminds us that consciousness must outgrow comfort. Every interaction, every mask, every smile, yours, mine, or another's, must eventually be purified by truth. We are not here to destroy deceit through confrontation, but to dissolve it through understanding. You are both the fooled and the awakener, the deceived and the redeemer. And when you finally see that, when you accept that all masks, including your own, belong to the same human dance, you discover a serenity deeper than trust, the serenity of wisdom. So go into the world awake. See the smiles, feel their warmth, but never abandon discernment. For in that discernment lives your freedom, your peace, and your courage to love without illusion. And when you finally smile, not to fit in, not to hide, but as a reflection of pure presence, that smile itself becomes truth. Not the smile of an enemy, but the smile of one who finally sees.